Big news for the Utah Hockey Club. Olli Maatta signs an extension. We're going to talk about it and our wild card watch on today's Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.
You are Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for joining us, everybody, and making us your first listen each and every single day when it comes to the Utah Hockey Club. I'm veteran NHL voice Tom Callahan, together with longtime team analyst Robyn Leaño. We are the dynamic duo that brings you the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. And Robyn, breaking news. I wish I had a siren of some sort. I'm going right to the graphic. Breaking news. Olli Maatta, contract extension. 3-year extension kicks in next year. $3.5 million AAV. Robyn, your thoughts?
You know, I think this is an incredible move for the Utah Hockey Club. You and I have talked about Olli Maatta at great length over the course of the last couple of months, ever since he joined the Utah Hockey Club, and just what an immensely valuable asset he has been to the team. A huge part of this defense, one that we didn't see coming, right? Because we were talking about the defense preseason and looking, this player. Here's the interesting thing. Well, I'll even add, we were talking about use of Välimäki a while back ago, right? That both Välimäki and Maatta represented Finland in the important nations. Välimäki actually barely even got any ice time. Maatta got significant ice time and looked great. But that was a whole, that I digress from that point. But what I'm trying to say here, Tom, is it's amazing how, you have one player come in and make all that much of a difference. And this extension, huge for the Utah Hockey Club.
So Maatta was acquired for a third-round draft pick that actually originally belonged to the Rangers anyway. So that wasn't even Utah's pick. And on top of that, although the way the Rangers are going, who knows, that can actually be a better and better pick. But number one, you pick that guy up for a mid-range pick, and he comes in and then really gets thrust into a huge role, because if you remember the first couple of games Maatta played with the team, Maatta was the TOI leader. So getting the most ice time was well over 20 minutes in the first, I'd say, week or two of games. And then it kind of, got balanced out a little bit more as, unfortunately, players were in and out of the lineup quite a bit.
This was a period in which, Jersey was injured and Marino was injured, and we didn't know what was going on and how exactly Utah was going to fix it. And I think they tried, calling up some that didn't end up working, and then that's when they finally made the trade for Olli Maatta. A little bit later, they end up also calling up Maverick Lamoureux, who made a pretty significant contribution for the time he was there.
Then also went out and got hurt.
And also went out and got hurt. But Maatta was out there supposed to eat the minutes, because also at that time, Tom, Sergachev was having some issues on the defensive side. We knew he could score that, and we knew he was great offensively. But the issue was he was making so many fundamental mistakes that, all right, you're not going to have we don't want you to eat the majority of the defensive minutes, because, well, we don't want to keep seeing these turnovers. So what we're going to see is we're going to have a defensive defenseman like Olli Maatta come in and eat these minutes.
And the way things went for Utah this year, don't forget, they brought in Robert Bortuzzo. They brought in Maatta. They brought in DeSimone, who was a waiver wire pickup and has really helped them get through a difficult period. So they were not afraid to go out and kind of switch things up, even though they went from no defense to a fully loaded defensive core in about a month around the draft. But Robyn, the injuries really kind of forced their hand. And I think that picking up a player who has won a couple of Stanley Cups now, Ian Cole and Olli Maatta were teammates on the Penguins. They won those 2 cups together with Pittsburgh. I guess, we're talking 10 years ago now. Wow, that's wild. Whew, I didn't realize it was that long ago.
Oh my God.
That's nuts. It was 15 and 16. So, geez.
Or 16 and 17.
Or 16 and 17. All right. So
almost
8 and 9 years ago. But still, it was not yesterday. And that feels like it was yesterday. But so he goes out there and he's got the veteran experience. He's got a deep playoff run. And you know what? He was one of the 2 expiring contracts. So this answers another question that you and I had, or does it? And I'm going to posit this to you in a moment. He's extended for 3 years. Obviously, they like him. They want him to be part of things. However, Robyn, don't get too sold on the idea that this makes him untradeable. It just means that now there's team control if he does get traded. So I don't see him, I guess, extending and then being dealt. However, it has happened.
It has happened. And some teams might look to them as an advantage because some teams might not want to have to deal with the negotiation part with that said player. And it's like, hey, we don't want to deal with a contract extension and see where you work out. I want to see what your dollar value looks like down the road. And if it's already locked in, we're willing to make some asset trades. So it's happened. I think with this happening at around this time, I'm kind of with you. I don't think it will happen, but don't be surprised if it does.
Most clubs don't want rentals, Robyn. They want some kind of team control.
Exactly. They want they want that level. Like the teams that want the rentals, the ones that like literally think this is their window, and they just need that one piece to get them over the hump this year. The ones that are looking for the more longer term, these are the ones that say, hey, we want to keep our window open for as long as we can. Most teams are that way. There's just that elite few who think this is the year.
That's right. Let's take a look at what Bill Armstrong had to say. The quote is, "We're thrilled to have Olli signed for the next 3 years. Olli is a smart defenseman and a true professional on and off the ice. He has brought stability to our blue line, has a tremendous work ethic, and is an excellent role model for our younger players. We look forward to having him as an important part of our core moving forward." So that does not sound like a guy they're planning to trade, but rather a guy that they're going to keep to help bring along these younger players, these younger defensemen, so that they have a veteran shoulder to lean on. Now, the other guy who's in that role right now is Ian Cole. So, Robyn, Maatta extended. Is Cole now that much more expendable? Now, he's older to begin with, which I think was the first thing that I thought in. If he is, I mean, he's 36, Ian Cole. Olli Maatta's 30. So there's a huge difference right there, and you feel much more comfortable giving Maatta 3 years. But does that almost signify to you that Cole might be on his way out?
I feel like a huge part of me is saying absolutely. I feel like it's Utah is taking a look at this strategically, and Bill Armstrong looks at everything incredibly strategically. And for a while, I've called him, like I think a lot of people had different nicknames for him. I called him Bargain Bill for a while because he always finds out a way. He always found good deals and figuring out a way to get, flip players who are at this point or that point in their careers and getting something out of it. And I feel like when it comes to that value, someone's going to want to trade for get the value out of a guy like Ian Cole. Well, Utah is taking a look inward and being like, this is who we have. We're comfortable with what we got.
Yeah, and honestly, the need for Utah at this point, they would add almost anywhere, I think, if they were able to get the right player. And again, Bill Armstrong said if they're going to go big, it's something dynamic that also fits into the plan. Cole is a rental who is a steady stay-at-home presence, doesn't do too much, and that is what you want. Maybe if you're a team with a cup run in you want a guy who's going to kill penalties, maybe gives you 15, 16 good solid minutes a night, is dependable as a veteran, has won a couple of cups.
Yep.
I think that's who he is in a nutshell. So, I like the extension for Maatta, and I think maybe you mentioned Lamoureux earlier. Maybe he comes back up if you move on from a Cole. Of course, there's also when is Bortuzzo going to be healthy? I don't 100% know yet, but there's questions.
There is questions, but I will say this, Tom. I think regardless, I would say, yeah, sure, this year I've already been pretty excited to see how this defense is shaping up into the last stretch of this season. But with Maatta now extended, to me, it really makes me really excited because you also just mentioned there's a good chance Lamoureux can probably see his ice time again come back next year, and I'm thinking the defense next year it's gonna look like it's gonna be fun to watch.
It will. It absolutely will, because you'll have your gray beard, if you will, with Maatta. And then here's what it looks like for next year right now, by the way. So you have Sergachev wrapped up through 27-28, as is Durzi and Maatta. Those all now go through 27-28. Sergachev is 8.5, Durzi is 6, and Maatta 3.5. Until 26-27, you have John Marino at 4.4. Next year, not this season, so your expiring contracts this year, let me get that out of the way, is DeSimone and Bortuzzo. Those are both 7.75, and Ian Cole at 3.1. But next year, you're expiring. By the way, Shea Weber, the last year he's on the books is next year.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's just Michael Kesselring. So, and he's 1.4 million. That's kind of a value move there. And he's an RFA in 26-27. So there's some team control. He is UFA the year after that. So they might have to do some juggling or a bridge deal or figure something out. But don't forget, non-roster defensive players right now. You've got Välimäki, who's 2 million through next year. You've got Duda at 950. Lamoureux is at 886.6. And these are all till 26-27. Terrell Goldsmith, 886.667. That is through 26-27. Then you've got Zuber signed through next year. Onibuchi actually expires this year, as does Koch. Kevin Connaughton, by the way. We have 2 years of Kevin Connaughton at 775. So, it's kind of interesting to hear where this is for the Utah Hockey Club. But they have the depth. They have those young players on the way. That's the other thing, Robyn, is next year this D-corps is going to look different again as those young players come into camp and push for jobs.
It really will be. But I will add this, and it's kind of just goes into we kind of also mentioned on how Utah's taking a look at their long-term goals, a lot of things like that, is what fits into their timeline. When you just reminded me about Shea Weber's finally being off the books, it reminded me of the fact that, well, let's take a look at this now. The cap's going up every single year for the next few years. And with Weber going off the books, Utah will have money to spend and will be able to take in a little bit more. They can go for a bigger splash and a bigger player.
Yep. And that coincides. That's my year 3 when all of that is going to come together as the first year he's off the books. So want to get to our wild card watch, and I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about the current roster. But where is everyone right now? We're going to talk about that next. And today's show brought to you in part by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. So I like the no shells variety, but maybe you're a traditionalist. Maybe you're saying, Tom, I cannot eat a pistachio without the effort it takes, the satisfying crack of the shell. That's fine. They have in shell. It's the classic favorite. I get it. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying that I like to grab a handful and go because they're great on the go. And I like to snack at work, and they're a complete protein. They provide all 9 essential amino acids. No shells, grab and go ease. I absolutely love it. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Back here on the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast, Tom Callahan, Robyn Leaño. Please, if you have not already, subscribe to this wonderful podcast. We love talking about the UHC. And you know what? We're here a lot, talking about a lot of different things. Today, it's the breaking news about Olli Maatta and the 3-year extension. Again, $3.5 million AAV. But yeah, give us a follow on social media. Give us the old thumbs up here on YouTube. It helps us with the algorithm, helps you to find more great hockey content as well. But the subscription is just vital for us to continue to grow and do some more fantastic work here, bringing you the coverage of the Utah Hockey Club. So, Robyn, coming into this week, and most folks are going to hear this on a Tuesday, the Western wild card race is bunched up. It is, I mean, it's bumper to bumper traffic on the freeway with a lot of honking because everybody wants to get past, but it's hurry up and wait because it's so tough to hurdle and leapfrog teams at this time of year. But I'll tell you what, right now, a 3-game win streak or a 3-game losing streak can make a complete difference on the outcome of your season.
Absolutely. And that's why, like, you're using that, that traffic as a little metaphor there. I'll kind of even to further that and say that this week, with the trade deadline looming, is like the bottleneck what's causing all this, like not necessarily causing all this traffic, but like once you pass the bottleneck, we're gonna start to see some separation, some things kind of, things move pretty quickly. Once this week passes, it's gonna be a wild week for this wild card race.
It is. And we have a fun new graphic for you on the YouTube side. Hey, if you want any more reason to watch us on YouTube, how about this graphic? Ta-da! Our brand new wild card watch graphic. Yes, indeed. So on the right side, you'll see the standings with the games played, the won-loss records, overall points, and then regulation wins in row because those matter for tiebreakers. Now, regulation wins are ROW, regulation and overtime wins. So, Robyn, right now, we look at the points column. Colorado comfortably ahead of Calgary, Vancouver, St. Louis, and Utah. So I really think, unless things change, it's going to be that last wild card spot that we're all focused on. Calgary at 65 points with 60 games played. Vancouver at 65 with 60 games played. St. Louis at 64 with 62 games played. And Utah 63 points with 61 games played. Yes, Calgary and Vancouver have games in hand. But it is just so close right now. And I really think that the 3-game win streak, the 3-game losing streak can make a huge, huge difference in the outcome of this race.
And I think especially and I'll even say this, that yeah, sure, Calgary and Vancouver have those games in hand. St. Louis actually has 62 games versus Utah 61. I think that's kind of where Utah is could be a little bit of an advantage here because this can give, Utah the opportunity to potentially leapfrog and because I think in all technicality they have the better quote points percentage. That's not on this list, points percentage. I know you, Tom, like you and I used to use that term all the time in the AHL because of the various different games played. So points percentage is what made the playoffs, but that's kind of how I judge things and taking a look at who has an advantage going into this week.
Well, and we also take a look at the schedules for the week as well of what's going on. So Utah this week, Thursday, Friday at Detroit, at Chicago, and their next game isn't until next week, the 10th of March, and that is back home against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So maybe you're looking at 2 out of 3 in that stretch, but Calgary on the road for 2 at Philly and at Dallas, and then against Montreal, on the road against Philly. Philly's still not an easy place to play. I know they're not having a good year. Dallas is very good. Montreal is fighting for a wild card spot. Vancouver, here's the funny thing. Vancouver's at home for 3 games, Anaheim, Minnesota, Dallas, which is not the easiest schedule, but Vancouver has been so much better on the road this year. Robyn, they just haven't appreciated the home cooking, so that is not necessarily to the Canucks' advantage.
No, it's not. And especially, too, when it's, one of those games against Dallas, who they're the Dallas Stars. They're a good hockey team, a really good hockey team. And then the other, another at the beginning of this, of the next 3 games for them is against Anaheim, who can be very streaky. They had some bad last couple of games, but I mean, you were the one that pointed out to me, Tom, and reminded me that, hey, they were on a really good run only throughout a pretty decent chunk of February.
Up until last week, they'd won 7 of 10. And then, of course, they kind of hit a little bit of the wall there. But, yeah, I mean, Anaheim can still beat you.
It's going to be a really interesting stretch for Vancouver. And I'm curious to see how that one turns out. But St. Louis is an interesting one, Tom, because they're on the road in Southern California this entire week. They're at LA on Thursday, and then Saturday, Sunday, back-to-back at Anaheim and back in LA.
That is interesting. And, they're going to stay out there the whole trip. And there is something about Los Angeles in March that can lull you to sleep. It just, the weather's gorgeous. You're outside, you're, just, it feels like a vacation, even though you're there to play hockey. And that is, I think, the secret weapon those teams have always had in nicer climates. When teams come in, they can lose the hockey focus just a little bit. So I actually think that's a pretty dangerous stretch for St. Louis. I could see them coming out losing 2 out of 3, if not all 3, if they're not careful.
They very well could, and especially too. I mean, LA is a tough team to play. They're one of the top teams right now in the Pacific Division, and they've been showing it. They have been a really tough team to play all season long, no matter who you are. So that puts St. Louis in a disadvantage in there. Plus the previous aforementioned of what we talked about with Anaheim.
Right. And Robyn, we're not at that point yet. And I'm not going to start doing the math this way, but eventually we're going to start talking about total possible points. So there's 82 games in an NHL schedule. I think once we get to 72 games played for these teams, then it's really time to start looking at the total possible points, because the most you can get for a win is 2 points. You get 1 point for going past overtime. So just in St. Louis's case, with 20 games remaining, 20 times 2, 40 possible points. I think it's a little early to start doing that kind of math.
A little early to start doing the magic number.
Right. We're not locking teams out yet. Although, again, if St. Louis does happen to somehow lose 2 of 3 or even 3 of 3, we might start putting nails in that coffin.
Yeah. Plus, and again, there's that. And the other thing I will say, because since I've already put that term out there, the magic number really only matters if you are a team that controls your own destiny. At this point, Utah doesn't.
Right.
They have everything. Yeah, they do need a little bit of help. They need a lot of things to go in their favor. But this week, if you take a look, taking a look at what from the graphic is, Utah will get that help. There is a lot of interdivisional play. An inter-conference play, I should say, in the next week among these teams.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting down the stretch. So, all right, Robyn and I are back to wrap it up. Don't forget, it is trade deadline week. That's coming up on Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to talk a little bit about that and give you our final thoughts here. Tom Callahan, Robyn Leaño, the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. Thanks for joining us, everybody. And Robyn, the trade deadline is coming up on Friday. I think it's weird, first of all, that they're doing it on a Friday when teams are playing games. I've heard people say this before, and I think even Elliot Friedman is one of those people who said it, and I couldn't agree more. The NHL trade deadline should be a day of no games, and it should be on a Monday. It used to be on a Monday, or at least early in the week. But a day with no games. Have it on a Monday, a Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't care.
I have a feeling during a huge chunk of my early professional career, I felt like it was almost always on a Tuesday.
And I would love them to do it on, but early week and no games.
Yeah.
Because now teams are playing critical games. What happens if Utah, who play Thursday and Friday, they make a deal on Thursday, so they got to hold a player out Thursday. They could lose a critical game holding a player out, and then they acquire a player who is not going to be there for Friday's game either. So I think the Utah Hockey Club is actually a really good example of a team that a Friday trade deadline with games around it could come back to haunt. I hope it doesn't.
Yes. We've seen that happen with some teams before. I think I don't think we see this as much. Maybe if you're an NBA fan, you might see it because you have one team who plays in the other side of the border. But we hear it happen a lot more often in the NHL. where what happens is after these trades, there is a delay. What happens during these delays, Tom, is these players are trying to get their visa because they're no longer employed by a Canadian franchise. They are employed by an American franchise. They have to get a work visa in their new country, and that takes time. And that delays them joining their team even more.
Yeah, some guys do have to get the immigration in line, and those are things you don't think of. And they have people there to fast track it, and believe me, the NHL
they got the money
teams,
to do it, but
they
sometimes there
do.
still is a delay because
Yep.
the bureaucracy, no matter, will still hit you.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely will. It absolutely will. So, Robyn, I guess really the first and the simple question, because there's still several days to go here in the week. But again, Utah doesn't play till Thursday. I'm just going to start the trade week talk with this. Do you expect Utah to be quiet, busy, or somewhere in between?
This is an interesting thing. I think this, and I am going to I guess recycle a term that you use, because I'm now on that train of the term that you use, and they're going to be very opportunistic because that can go either direction, right? They can find they could potentially buy low, not necessarily buy low, but they can buy at a good value to what they consider a good value, at least what Bill Armstrong considers a good value. But they can also, they have the opportunity here to, with how some of their depth chart is laid out, to move some assets that they don't really need right now, in favor of bringing in some more assets for next year, 2 years down the road, whatever they need. Move some money around.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing too. They do have that little bit of cap space to still be able to play with, and they can. But I don't think they have the appetite for those deals anymore, unless whatever else is thrown into them is of such amazing value that you would have a hard time turning it down.
Yeah.
But I think they're kind of past that era. I don't really see them being the buffer team anymore.
They are past taking on the dead contracts of your Webers and your Datsuks and your whoever else. You're not going to see that anymore. And honestly, I don't think even the last couple of years the Coyotes were taking that as well. But what you're seeing, what they were doing, Tom, was they were taking in. I still think they can still do a little bit of this. They were still taking in overvalued players who just were well past their prime and kind of felt like they were dead weight. They just had teams felt like, hey, we just don't want this, don't want to deal with this anymore. The Coyotes at the time were willing to take those kind of deals, and Utah still might, but they now have a little bit of extra leverage. They're like, all right, you need to sweeten the pot a little bit more. We have the room, but you have to really, really make it worth our while.
And I'm going to give you an example of a team, and there are several teams that you'll hear the phrase dollar in, dollar out, because they're that close to the cap. Edmonton is one of them. And Evander Kane's contract is going to handcuff Edmonton because it's kind of an albatross. It's over $5 million. So a team like Utah could do one of two things. They could either acquire a Kane, which honestly I hope they wouldn't, but they could also bounce part of that contract through Utah in exchange for something from a team like Edmonton. Now, why do I bring up Edmonton as my example, Robyn? Because they extend Maatta. If there's no announcement coming on Vejmelka, Edmonton is in the market for a goaltender. And of course, we're waiting to see if and where John Gibson may go from Anaheim. But let's say the price is too high or it's just not what they want. I still think Edmonton wants a goalie. And if Veg is only going to be a rental, could you end up then getting some significant benefits from Edmonton in terms of players that they're not going to use in this cup run right now for bouncing part of that Evander Kane contract through and them getting Vejmelka? That's a situation where Utah could really stand to benefit.
And I think especially, especially if it's a team like Edmonton, and that would probably be willing to overpay if they know they really need a goalie. Because you mentioned, and we talked about it, and really anybody who has a solid working pair of eyeballs who can watch an Edmonton game and say, and with either of their goaltenders, and be like, yeah, they don't have a goaltender.
Yeah, can you imagine if they would have had one like going to the final and really and I don't want to pile on Stuart Skinner and talk about he's terrible. He's not terrible. He just wasn't good enough.
I mean,
but their defense is not good enough either.
I mean, think about the last year. So you had Stuart Skinner. I think for a while they had who was it right before? Was it they did a couple. I'm trying to think what his name is. There's a bunch of K's in there. Yeah, there's 2 K's or something.
Well, they had Jack Campbell for a while. They had Laurent Brossoit. They had Skinner was in the mix 2 years in a row.
They had Mike Smith for a little bit, a while back ago.
Oh my goodness, Mike Smith.
Ago.
Oof. Man, you want to go back and talk about Bill Ranford and Grant Fuhr while you're at it? Wow, we're really going backwards. Eddie Lowe.
I mean, that was about a decade ago. I mean, that was a decade ago, but
I'm going to go back to the WHA goaltenders if we're not careful.
Oh, God.
But seriously, to your point, though, like there is that thought out there. Toronto, are they good with Joseph Woll? Like there's value out there right now. Plus, you've got these other oddball contracts that are hanging out there. Is Rantanen going to be on the move from Carolina again? Nobody's really sure what's going on. Pittsburgh needs a goalie, but they're out of the playoffs, so they're not picking up a rental. But there's a lot of different situations that are out there that could benefit the Utah Hockey Club, especially if they're looking at, hey, if you consider, and I would, and I don't really like to use the phrase moral victory, but if they get in the playoffs this year, Robyn, as an 8 seed, that is a huge moral victory for this team.
I mean, that's
overachieving.
Yes, that is overachieving, and it shows that this rebuild is happening faster than they anticipated. That could go in 2 different, but this could also go in 2 different directions, Tom. This could be a huge moral victory for them, can give them the boost for next season to be even more competitive, or I don't think the latter will happen because I know Bill Armstrong is smarter than this. They can get a little bit too ahead of themselves and want more.
Yes, and I don't think Bill Armstrong is that type of GM. He's not a cart before the horse guy, so I don't really have that concern. But some teams will. Some teams will freak out and deviate from the plan. You watch. It happens every year. Somebody always overpays. So, I don't know. Any final thoughts on this one, Robyn?
So, Bill Armstrong. No, I will say that it was a really good, the really good extension for Olli Maatta, taking a look at what the value is, and I think this week in general is going to be huge for the Utah Hockey Club. So once again, just pay attention to what's coming up in this race. Especially the trade deadline coming. What direction Utah's going to go? Are they going to be a playoff team, or are they going to just remain a bubble team for this season?
So give us your thoughts. Whatever you think, drop it in the comments below, or you can reach out to us on social media. We always welcome your chat and your thoughts and your questions. If you have questions for us, certainly fire those away as well. Robyn, where can they find us on social media?
They can find us everywhere on social media. So on Instagram, Threads, and X at LO_NHL Utah. You can also follow us, find us on Facebook. You just search up Locked On Utah Hockey Club. You can also find us on Blue Sky at Locked On Utah Hockey. The same if you are on TikTok. We're trying to build the base a little bit more over there. Get some more shorts sent your way over on TikTok. You can find me personally at Robyn_Leaño on X. Also at Robyn Ice Time on Blue Sky.
And I am on Blue Sky 99% of the time at Tom Talks. I do still post, and I did again today, at Callahan on Air over on Twitter if you want to find me there. But best place to get me is on Blue Sky these days. So we appreciate you all being here and being a part of the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. Thank you so much. And again, throw us your trade proposals too. Maybe we'll feature a couple on the show. We'll dissect them. And we'll see if you would have made a good NHL general manager. That's always fun for Robyn and I to take a look at those too. So we'll take a look at it. We'll entertain any Toronto Maple Leaf fan trade proposals, Robyn. I know those are your favorite. So, all right, everybody. Yeah. Sure. Thanks for joining us. We better stop here before we get in trouble. All right. We'll talk to you next time on the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.